And it looks like we're live. Welcome and welcome back to the enolve podcast, where we talk about problem solving. And if you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that right now there's a big problem going on that a lot of people talk about, and that's the great resignation. Apparently, a lot of people are tired of their jobs, quitting them left and right. And so this is a big complex problem, which probably has several causes, right? Why somebody might be quitting their job, or why they might, you know, choose to do something else, or not take the jobs that are available. I'm not exactly sure about that, but who I do have here with me today is Lesley, and she has written two books. One of them is interestingly titled "I Love My Job, but It's Killing Me." And Lesley, that sounds really like an interesting topic to dive in for. If somebody has a job that they feel passionate about, but at the same time that job is killing them. I mean, that sounds like a really interesting topic. So I'm glad to have you on the show today. Thanks for coming in. And can you tell us a little bit what got you to the point where you decided I have to write a book about this topic?
Well, thanks for asking, Oliver, and thanks for having me here today. I wrote that book because I truly loved my job, and it was killing me. And my best friend Lori and I were both music teachers at the same time, been teaching for like 30 years each, and the stressors that came with our jobs just were doing us in, and eventually it took her life. But what it did for me is, as I was approaching that 30-year mark, I was like, I can't keep going through this. I've had, just in a nutshell, 12 major surgeries, was on 14 pills a day just to get through pain and anxiety and depression, all the things that were making it so hard to get through the day, and it was not helping. And so um, as I watched my friend who ended up with cancer and all of the things she went through, we'd sit at her chemo appointments, we'd sit in our family rooms and talk about things, and we'd say, I love my job, but it's killing me. And it was because we wanted to do so well at them. We loved being around students. We were both music teachers, so teaching music and taking kids on trips and all of the joys. So it was like an addiction almost. You get addicted to all that joy and the fun and the stuff that comes with it. But then there's a price that you pay for that. And for us, it was our health. My mental and physical health was a hot mess. And I led me to the point where I was going to walk away from this job that I really dearly loved because it was so hard on my health. And so it was about 3 years ago now when I finished the manuscript for that first book. And Lori was towards the end of her life. I finished the manuscript just days before she died. And she had asked me, she said, Lesley, you had, because by then I had figured things out about 5 years ago, how to get myself healthier. And it was a long process and it took a lot of help. I had to reach out, problem solving. You want to talk about finding the right people to help me solve the problems that I was dealing with, when I decided that traditional medicine, more pills and more surgeries were no longer the answer because they weren't serving me and I couldn't continue like that. So when I finally, after learning all this stuff and doing all the research and figuring this stuff out and figuring out how do you assess where you're having the issues and stuff, then basically as a teacher, I'm like, Lori said, you got to tell other teachers what you did so they don't go down this path. And so I wrote a lesson plan. That's really what my first book is for teachers to assess and go through. There's little quizzes in there, how figuring out what the bigger problems are to address first. And then if this is your issue, how can what steps can you take while you're still overwhelmed and busy? You can't just drop everything. The world doesn't stop and say, give yourself 6 months to get your stuff together and then it'll be okay. That's not real life. In fact, I'm a little embarrassed about the title of my second book because I called it Love the Job, Lose the Stress. Oh, for real, nobody loses the stress. What you do is you learn how to manage the stressors and how to decrease your stress levels. But stress is coming all the time. I finished that second book about teaching and losing the stress and all of that. I finished that manuscript 10 days before the pandemic shut schools down. So you want to talk about a teacher under more stress? I'm like, oh my God, really? I said to the publisher, can we please change the title? Because that's so unreal. They're like, no, can't change the title now. So I'm like, oh, but a year and a half after finishing that book and teaching during a pandemic and putting to the test all of the things I teach about, I got more proof that it works. And I've worked with clients and all these other music teachers, and they're applying this. And it's not easy, but it's learning to do the things that can help you so that in this instance, something that you really love, how do you have the stamina and endurance to do it? And that was the problem I was trying to solve. And so I wanted to help other people solve that problem.
That's quite amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And it my mind was going all over the place with what you said. I mean, on the one hand, you're literally speaking about death and somebody losing their life there, and
Yeah.
I think there has been shown that there is different links between, stressors and emotional health and also cancer and all of that, or at least I
Oh,
hear a lot of people talk about that.
there's medical, all of that is, yes.
There is? Tell me more. Is that
When we're in stress mode, our body is nothing but chemically, we just change what our chemicals are. When we're in that stress, fight or flight, we shoot out cortisol, the hormones. As a teacher and learners, we can't learn because we're in survival mode. So it's hard to learn, it's hard to teach, it's hard to make decisions, it's hard to get something done because even if you don't think consciously that you're stressed, if you've still got other stressors and pressures, it impacts how your body responds to things. I do things with my students and my clients where we do some breathing exercise, and we measure, as musicians, we measure time and tempo, right? So we use our heart rates because that's our body's metronomes, and we use biometrics, right? Let's see how fast our heart is racing when we're under stress, and then when we do some different techniques, we can measure that our heart rate has gone down. What else has changed? Is our jaw not clenched? Is our body feeling different? Hey, is it easier to focus? And by learning those techniques and practicing those techniques, what I learned is, I've learned to use my biology, my own body's, the way we're built to work. And I teach that to other people in the same way I teach other people to play music. It's all about controlling muscles and doing things intentionally. So teaching music and teaching people to get focused, to get centered, and to literally change their body chemistry so that they're not doing, shooting out those chemicals that produce disease. And
like
long-term stress, chronic stress is disease.
Yeah, right. I'm so geeking out right now about everything you talk about because of how it connects. What you're
It's
saying
all
about
connected.
music and
Mhm.
the workplace and stress reduction, and then the whole health aspect and everything, right? So it on one hand, I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of stuff going into that. How are you able to wrap this all up into a book, or how long is your book? I mean, like,
I, I,
how did you manage to make it concise enough to where it's all these decades of lessons that you pretty much have learned there? How did you package it all into one book that's actually digestible?
Well, I sat down with somebody who helped me. Like I would hire a private teacher to work with me to play piano. I hired someone who helped with the writing process. And and essentially what I did is I had to really look at how did I go from being 75 pounds heavier and in pain. I was walking with a walker, for the love of God. I had a cannula with a nose thing. I was teaching with an oxygen tank because I had gotten out of the hospital and run out of sick days. I mean, it was a mess. So anyway, I sat there and really looked at when I made the change from that unhealthy state of being, of that unhealthy mind, the unhealthy body, the stressed out unhappiness. And I got to the other place, the place I am now and where I've been for the last several years. How did I get there and what did I do? And I started analyzing it, and I found there were four key things, and they all start with the letter M. The four biggest influences on my health were the meals I eat, the movement I do in my body, diet and exercise, but I call it meals and movement because that's what we put in becomes us and the way we operate it. And then using music, everything from as a way to express your emotions or to listen to motivate you when you need to sleep or to exercise or to get fired up or whatever. We can use music in communal ways with other people to be part of a community. That was a big part of my healing. And then finally, a mindful approach to all of it and becoming mindful. What am I doing that's just that I don't realize that's not good for me? I was in survival mode for such a long time because I had another event coming up or another concert, and I'd go to the doctor and say, my back's really hurting again. I don't have, we'll do the surgery in the summer, and they'd start, giving me more pills for the things and like. So anyway, I was looking for different solutions, and then I really came down to those four things, and I call those my M power method, starting with the letter M, the four components. And I break those down, and I help in each section. There's a little, well, I'm a teacher, so we analyze, everybody does a little pre-quiz, then I write about it, and then there's the homework piece of each chapter. Here's where, if this is your biggest issue, here are the steps you can take, and here are some resources. So I try to put it, because I was so overwhelmed when I started this, it was like, I don't even know where to start, what questions to ask. I love the idea of your app. You're out there, what questions do you ask, or how do you solve the problems? And I couldn't even articulate what questions I needed to ask at first. So I'm trying to make that simpler for the already overwhelmed teachers and the like, so that they can
Right.
say, I can recognize their story. I can't solve this for everybody. I can't make all the stress go away, but I know what it feels like as a teacher and a mom.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, exactly what you're saying. A lot of that comes down to really the articulation, right? And finding the proper words to put down. And so that's I think really helpful, where just a book like that comes in handy, where you're like, okay, somebody who's gone through this, how have they described that? What has their mind done that now I can, see if my mind can maybe do the same thing? And finding these words, that creative process, right? That can be difficult. But then once you channel it all in, kind of maybe also kind of like a musical composition, right? Once you have it all distilled down into that one format, then it can be presented, can be used, and it has all these functionalities. So a couple clarifying questions about your book. Actually, I have three of them. And I want to start with the a little bit out there, but a lot of people that talk about like stress reduction and health and the workplace and everything, that kind of people that deal with that topic, they go a little bit off into what I'm going to call woo land. Okay, so they go really like the spiritual route and everything. Now, from how I talk to you, I sense you're not so much about that. Is that right? Or can you tell me a little bit about that?
I approached this because so my first book was about how I got myself together. And a big part of that is a mindfulness piece, is being still every day. It's regulating my own nervous system and allowing it to rest. Like you'd take a snow globe that's all shaken up and set it down, let all the energy sit. So you could talk about that as woo-woo, like sitting there and meditating or whatever. But when I teach this to my students, and book 2 is really about how do you teach students this self-regulation and self-management so that teaching's so much easier. Help them get all of that debris out of their heads and help them settle in for class. And as a music teacher, I teach it through the whole process of our bodies are part of our instrument, whether you're singing or playing an instrument. So we prep it by getting our lungs stretched out. The vibration of our instrument, we want to be able to absorb the vibrations of our instruments and the music around us so that we can play better. So I teach it from that standpoint. Again, the biometrics of let's take our heart rate. What do you feel in your body when this happened? How does your mind feel different after you have a chance to rest? And then how is our class different? So, and I talk to students and parents and admin and everybody about, I'm not trying to do this woo-woo stuff. I'm literally going into the biology of how our bodies are meant to work. The deeper the breath, the longer extension of it, we can literally start to de-escalate when we relax our bodies. I mean, people can feel it when they go through this process. So I really approach it from the here's how it physics or the physical piece and what does it feel like in your body, and try to keep it so that it's not anything that anyone would go, are you trying to cast spells on my kid or do some weird stuff? But I have the conversations, and a big part of when I teach this, at seminars and everything, is always about the most important part isn't how you do this with your students, it's prepping your community so that they don't start thinking, God, there's some weirdo out there trying to do weird woo-woo stuff. Because I use the word woo-woo in my class when I talk and with parents at curriculum night, so that they have a clear understanding of what we're doing. Because when you can explain to them, I'm trying to help your student. My third book is going to be called Pay Attention. It is teaching how to focus. And what parent doesn't want their kid to pay attention when they're giving them instructions? How many times you say, clean your room, they don't pay attention. How can you do that? How can so when they understand how we can assist in that process, but we have to teach people how to do it, not just tell them to pay attention. So anyway, it could be seen as woo-woo, except I really have intentionally grounded this in how does this affect us as musicians, as individual musicians, and as a community. There's a communal energy when you get everyone settled in together before you just jump into something. So
Nice, like it, love it. Cool approach. Also, I'm thinking how, with this, call it woo, call it spiritual, whatever, there seems to be like a community or a group of people who are really in that world. And then very much in contrast to that, we seem to have like the more scientific mainstream, if you want to call that. And they clash a little bit occasionally. Also, again, recently, with the pandemic and talking about health and vaccines and all of that stuff, there's many different perspectives. But then, if you really open your mind to both of them and give them both a chance and kind of develop a more holistic worldview, I think then you see some new insights and you see how all the puzzle pieces connect and how none of them is exactly wrong. It's just like there's a healthy medium ground, and you don't have to, all out reject everything that society has ever done for the last 2,000 years to still
Right.
live a good life and still make progress also, and achieve your goals.
Mhm.
Now, two more questions about your book. You seem to really focus on teachers. Would you say it's a book exclusively for teachers, or can anybody benefit from it? And do we need to get both books, or what's the difference between the two books?
So I wrote it through the lens of it being a teacher and a mom, because that's what I know. It's interesting you asked that question, because several of the reviews, and I think one that's even in the forward there, was by a 911 operator and people in other areas that also experience stress. And the one gal said, "I'm not a teacher, I'm a 911 dispatcher, but I understand this exactly, and I can apply these same techniques." Because I try to find techniques, not things that you'll have to stop and, like I was saying earlier, stop and change everything, but how can you start incorporating things in your life? Because we all have to do that. But when I was learning or going through the writing process, the coach that I hired said, she said, you want to be more specific. So by writing to someone, to such a specific audience, others might be able to relate, yes. But if I tried to write it too broadly, then yeah, not enough. So I find that music teachers who are stressed are really finding, hey, they get that. So, and you asked about the two books. The first book is basically for teachers, how to get your own shit together. And the second one is how to help your students get theirs together. How do you take, when I discovered this tool for myself and the power that I had from going from all the pills every day to stop and take a breath. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff in between, don't get me wrong. I'm off all those prescriptions. I feel better than ever. And I did this, I'm doing it through breathing and conscious silence for a few minutes a day. How could that be a bad thing? And so that's why I wanted to teach teachers how to incorporate this. When I found out what happened when I did this with my students and how it helped them get focused and how it helped me teach easier, how I didn't have to repeat myself, because students, after 4 minutes of this every day, learned how to relax, and it's just so much easier. So then again, let's write a book and teach teachers how to do this in their classroom. Um, so yeah, that's what the two different books are. You can't teach it in your own classroom if you don't really own it. I would be a terrible music teacher if I wasn't a great musician, right? I have to hone those skills first before I can teach others. So a teacher that might already have their own personal stuff together, but they're wondering, how can I support my students' social and emotional needs? I've got my own stuff. I wasn't supporting my own social and emotional needs when I was in the shape where I was, before my first book. But I was trying to support everyone else's in the classroom. Teachers are always being asked to support students' social and emotional needs. I want to get the teachers' needs supported first so that they can help their students better.
Awesome. That really, really good stuff. But help me just be really clear on it. So the one that's called "I Love My Job, but It's Killing Me," that is the one for teachers teaching it to their students, and the
No,
other one is,
that's for yourself. Like, I love my job,
oh,
but it's just
that's the
killing me.
one
How
for
do I get
myself.
healthy?
Okay.
Yep. Then the next one is love, you get from that part two, love the job, lose the stress. Like, you've worked your way through it. Now, how do you get it so your students are in that space? So when you're going to work every day, you're all in that zone.
Oh,
That's good stuff.
got it. Okay, so gotcha. So first you get yourself in order, and then you continue doing that job that you love, but you actually improve the job and you innovate on it, and you
Yes.
make it work more smoothly. Telling you, I feel like you kind of wrote enolve in a book, honestly, because all those things that you mentioned, right? Fulfilling your social and emotional needs, for example, or generally fulfilling your needs, reducing stress, but also being, effective and productive at the same time, and finding all these good solutions and having good frameworks and strategies. That's exactly what we talk about as well. And very much, I relate to the challenge of, well, this is such a broad topic, so let's boil it down. So good on you for finding a good transition in that, right? Where does somebody who needs your book, what is the transition they make? And then also having that kind of targeting dialed in, where like, okay, I'm gonna focus on talking to teachers, because if I try to talk to everybody, it's like so difficult to get anyone to listen to you. So instead, focusing on teachers, focusing on a specific transition. Love it. Good job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Oliver.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else you want to share? We'll be sure to drop a link to the books in the comments here. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything you want viewers to take away from this?
Oh, just any teachers out there, thank you for what you're doing right now. This is hard work, and you got to have the tools you need for the stamina to do this, because kids need you, but we need you to be healthy.
Love it, love it. And also thank you to you for, improving our teachers and making their jobs better and making their lives easier and kind of helping us move forward as a civilization. And also congratulations on your own transition. And it sounded like you really turned your life around. So that's very inspiring. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Lesley.
Thanks, Oliver. It's great to meet you.
Good to meet you
Bye.
as well. Take care.
Bye.